Our panel is here. The market watcher Danielle Shea joining us today, B. Riley Wealth Management's Chief Investment Strategist Paul Dietrich, and from Barron's, host of the Barron's Roundtable on this network on Friday nights, Jack Otter is also here. All right, guys, a lot we can hopefully squeeze in here. And Danielle, first on this idea of bullish bearish, we were talking about it in the oil market. We got about as bearish as could be yesterday in the stock market. I know some people look at that fear greed index where there was about as much fear as you can handle. So not as much of a bounce back maybe as we anticipated today, but we're still up. What do you think of the stock market right now?
So the stock market right now is driven purely based off of fear and emotion, which I think is probably the worst part because it's not really looking at fundamentals. We got that overnight bounce when President Trump mentioned a possible stimulus, and because of the extreme bearishness in the market, I thought it was possible to get a short covering rally higher. But
looked like it. We're up 900 at the beginning on the Dow, and then the whole thing faded because nobody knows what. Well, I guess the structure, what your view, Paul, is on this of the stimulus maybe matters to some people in terms of whether we're going payroll tax cut or we're going something more targeted and temporary. But what do you think should happen?
I think the market is basically reacting and not very favorably to the stimulus package that's been out there. I think if you can target things to people who are having problems in the economy, it's good. But the biggest element is the payroll tax cut, and that's cutting money out of Medicare and Social Security. It's already underfunded, and I think it's dead on arrival. The Democrats are never going to vote for that, so it's kind of symbolic, but not really substantive. The best stimulus that we've gotten is the $160 billion de facto tax cut that the Saudis and the Russians have given the American people. Thank you, Russia and Saudi Arabia.
Well, the oil industry doesn't see it that way, but I get your point on consumer prices and lower interest rates.
It's money into the pockets of average Americans. And also, with the lowering of rates, Morgan Stanley came out and said $600 billion would go into people's pockets because of refinancing of mortgages because of the cut. That's real stimulus.
Yeah, that part is definitely, just about everybody you know that owns a home is at least thinking about it, Jack. But what's your thoughts on how we structure this?
Absolutely. Well, a couple of points. One, that gas money is not only real, it actually swings above its weight in terms of psychology. Gas is the only price that's like in 6-foot high letters on the side of the highway. People see a lower number and they think things are great. As to stimulus, exactly, the payroll tax cut, it sounds great. Who wouldn't like it? But it tends to be kind of broad-based, not very well targeted. And it's not only Democrats who are against it. Apparently, Kudlow and Mnuchin are not so favorable on it.
It seems like there's a little infighting.
Mitch McConnell isn't on it. So that could be DOA. I do think attacking sick leave is a really good idea. Not only do you put money in the pockets of hourly workers who might not get it otherwise, you keep them away from us, right? You might go to work sick if you don't get sick leave. You stay home if you get paid.
We started this conversation, and we'll end it before the break in the same place on kind of fear and greed, but on a different subject. Jack, you go first here. The idea of what the governor of New York is trying to do in a suburb of New York City, New Rochelle, where there has been an outbreak of coronavirus, is to contain it. They've literally used that word. They're going to allow people to come and go. The stores will open, but they're closing down the schools, closing down other areas where large gatherings of people take place. When other people outside of this area see that, helpful to say government's on top of it, or scary to say, boy, this is worse than I thought? I wonder how people are reading these headlines.
I hate to say this, but both.
Probably, yeah.
So it's a really fine line to walk. Obviously, you want to take the maximum steps necessary to help people, but you want to try to avoid scaring them. I mean, one step that would be really helpful, especially for the markets, would be to get more tests out there.
100%.
I think part of the reason that the market is, selling first and asking questions later is because we don't know the answer to that very important question: how bad is this? And if we can get more people tested, we can start to get a handle on that.
That's a good point.
And it might be good news.
We assume more people have it because we see other countries, but we don't know exactly what's going on, for real.
That's correct. But I mean, at the same time, the bond markets have been showing us we've seen a real flight to safety in the bond markets, money piling in there as well as gold. Every single sector of the S&P is getting hit. Normally, when you have a correction, you at least have staples and utilities starting to trade higher. The price movement that we're seeing is really indicative of a more deeper downside correction.
Or a bear market,
yes,
which we're
exactly.
just about in.
Which we're right on the line of.
We are right on the line of a bear market.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, head of the National Institutes of Health,
yes,
he basically said, we know what the death rates are. It's like 27 right now, but we don't know how many people have it, so we can't get a percentage. And he thinks, or at least he said over the weekend in one interview, that once we know how many people have it, the death rate as a percentage may be going down near the flu level.
People think differently. Whether it goes down to that, we don't know. But if it even goes down at all, that makes people feel differently. All right, let's get a quick break. The panel stays with us. And Bernie, all of these moves by governments bring up the point about, what happens to worker productivity if people are working from home. Our panel back. I know you guys have either thought about this or had to deal with it already. Forget about the virus. Danielle, you were telling us pretty much from home, right? So
yes, I work from home, and it definitely does improve my productivity.
Improves it?
I think it does. Less distractions, right? But I'm lucky. Most people can't work from home. You have people from companies like Amazon and Microsoft, perhaps they can, but what about the middle class? What about the servers and restaurants and retail workers? They can't do that.
That is obviously the industry that you're in, obviously determines a lot of this. But, Paul, for those who can, the question of whether they're more or less productive, I mean, have you looked at any of the numbers on this or have any views on this?
Yeah. Bigger corporations, especially global corporations or corporations that have people in many cities, they've been pretty used to a lot of people working at home and people traveling, with their laptops and doing just as much work. And there have been study after study that basically says there may even be a slight gain in productivity. So big corporations have a lot of experience in this.
Ever since 9/11, especially here in this country or in this city, it's something we've thought about. Something we did, Jack, after that a lot in those cases, especially the first few weeks, for those who, weren't covering it directly or whatever the case may be, were there working from home on Wall Street and other places. So people have done it before.
A Stanford study actually found a huge boost in productivity over a two-year period. It's a pretty robust study over a two-year period. And the market is clearly betting this way. Zoom Communications is up 70% year to date.
Which is a company that you can...
for teleconferencing.
Teleconference on,
exactly.
Right.
So clearly there's that bet. Now, the reality is some people maybe have children at home or other issues where it's a little tougher to get as much work done. But I think on balance it will be fine.
What do you think about the permanency of it? Do you have a view on that? Like whether or not companies say to themselves, they didn't do this necessarily after 9/11, but if they say it after, you know what? We're saving some dough here, and people are still getting the work done. Some of this becomes permanent.
Absolutely, and you look at the real estate savings that they could accrue if they really make it permanent.
Sure.
That said, look, a lot of managers just are not comfortable with that idea. They want people in the office, so I don't see a huge sea change.
See, I thought there was a move. You're right. I thought there was a move back towards being in the office, especially in recent years. And the term that was always used was collaboration.
Right.
Yes.
And many companies feel that way. You hear leaders of companies, Paul shaking his head, but you don't think there's an importance on the fact of being able to collaborate, meet with people in person, and talk it through.
Technology has solved that problem. I mean, people are communicating, texting, and using
Zoom and
other things like that. And so everybody does that. I mean, if you work for a large company where you're working with people in different cities, that's the only way to do it. But it makes it so easy, and I think it's technology that's driving this and has been.
There's two sides, right? You're either in a meeting too long when you're in the office, or maybe on Zoom you can shut it off sooner. But to be serious, a lot of technology in other places, CEOs have tried it and come back and said, no, we need people in person to collaborate more. Do you miss it?
I do think it's important, and I love working from home because I feel like I can get a lot of work done. But when I need to collaborate with my team, I have to go and be in the office, and that's when I can really get things done in a team-building environment. And so I think that it's really difficult to say that everything can be done from home. I do think that you need to be in person to some extent.
He's not convincing Paul at all. He just keeps shaking his head there. He's fine. He's going to work from anywhere. Quick clarification or addition to our reporting on new